First of all, both of you talk about how this guest spot came about and what makes it perfect for Josh in this role.
I just called every day for the past year and a half, Melissa, and I would leave her voice notes, texts, messages. She most of the time, I think she blocked me, to be honest.
Like,
But
Josh, it's
I
2 in
called
the
her.
morning. We're on different coasts.
Yeah. So what about that role? Hunting party. Hunting party. No, no, but seriously, it is kind of that way. I've been a huge fan of this since it first started. Of course, the biggest fan, president of the Melissa Roxburgh fan club. And I just love her in this part. And I love the show. I think it's so fun. It's so clever. She's so perfect for this part. And I was just hoping and praying that someday I'd weasel my way in there.
He's being very kind, but it was mutual. I bombarded him for months. I think mostly season 2. I think season 1 I was still wrapping my head around some stuff, but season 2 I'm like, okay, I have my grasp. I want all my friends to come play now, and Josh is kind of my first phone call for those sorts of things. So I hounded him for a little bit, but he was busy with Zootopia, which has been amazingly successful. And he got to go on an elaborate press tour for that with his family. And then as soon as he got home, I kid you not, as soon as he got home,
3 days later,
literally 3 days later, I was like, okay, it's time to come over and play now. And thankfully he did. Thankfully he said yes. And I think what makes him good for this role is that, we know him as Prince Charming, Ben Stone, this hero for the people. And I think this is the furthest from those characters that could possibly exist. But what Josh does well is he infuses it with honesty. And I think in order to play a serial killer, you have to find the honesty in that. And Elliot's this complex guy who makes shoes out of skin.
Beautiful shoes, Meredith. Beautiful.
They are really beautiful. In fact, like when we saw them on set, I was like, I don't blame them. These are really good shoes. How much? No, I think, Josh is a very refined man. And I think that Elliot has a taste for good things. But I think what has made Josh so great in this role is that he knows how to tap into like why someone's doing what they're doing. And he found that with Elliot. And I think, we see Elliot pre-pit and post-pit, and they're kind of 2 different killers. And he found the honesty on both ends of it. And it made it such an interesting thing to watch, that you get to see this guy go from being just like a stone cold killer because of what he's gone through to like attempting a new route with that. And it was just really fun to watch him do that.
How was it finding this new dynamic between you two? Because just for 4 seasons, you played siblings. This is a very different dynamic for you two on screen.
Very different dynamic. That came from warmth and trust and love. And this is this sort of warped game of cat and mouse that's going on. But, Bex as a character and Melissa infuses her with so much empathy. It's why she's so good at reading these killers and getting into the psychology of these killers. So in a way, it is this warped version of Manifest, a warped version of these 2 characters, because she is trying to get Elliot to see himself. She approaches him like a human, like a person, and trying to get him to admit some sort of accountability or to recognize it within himself. And he still tries to control and steer the narrative in a certain kind of way. But she doesn't let him get away with that. And it makes for a really explosive and amazing ending to that episode, as it just escalates and escalates throughout. It's a great show, and it's a great show to be part of, and it's a great show to come on as a serial killer, I gotta say.
It's an interesting thing because like we've had some pretty cool guest stars, obviously Josh being my favorite, but each episode is kind of like its own vignette of the killer itself rather than about us, Beck, Shane, and Hassani. And I think that's what makes it so fun for people to come on as guest stars, is that they get to create this whole world for that one character. and before we go to the next episode. So yeah, we're just lucky that we snagged Josh for it.
And they also write them so great. You know, they're so attractive for an actor to want to come in and play because, you know, he wasn't just this straight up, you know, stone cold killer, even though he is that, but because of the pit and the way that the pit acts as a prison, as a body for these killers to be put into, you know, he goes through this therapy, we'll call it, where he is completely rewired, reformatted to where he comes out and his whole psychology has changed. His obsession is there, the craft is there, the need to dominate is there, but it's warped now with this sense of he understands in a way what his victims have gone through. So he has this really weird warped sense of remorse and empathy inside of him, which makes him even scarier in my way, in my view.